Every family has a night they'll never forget. For Emily and Michael, that night was the eve of Halloween, when the world was covered in pumpkins, cobwebs, and excited children playing pretend. It started like everyone else's evening. Warm cinnamon candles, a kitchen counter full of orange cups and candy bowls, their 6-year-old daughter, Ava, twirling through the living room in fairy wings, giggling without a care in the world. Nothing unusual, nothing alarming, just tradition, just fun, or so they thought, because sometimes the enemy doesn't knock loudly. Sometimes he whispers through what looks harmless. And sometimes God whispers too, but his voice comes through the last place we expect. Not lightning, not thunder, a child. A tiny voice pierced the evening as softly as a feather falling. Yet it sounded like a trumpet in heaven. Ava stopped spinning. Her wings drooped. Her laughter faded. She looked up with wide, innocent eyes and asked a question so simple, so pure, and yet so powerful it froze the air in the room. "Mommy, who are we celebrating?" Silence followed. A silence loud enough to break pride, tradition, and comfort. Emily's hands stilled over the black paper bats she'd been cutting. Michael's cheerful hum died in his throat. The room suddenly felt unfamiliar, as if someone else had entered, someone unseen, watching, waiting. Ava blinked, confused by the stillness she caused. Her voice dropped to a whisper, as if the question frightened her too. Is Halloween for Jesus, or for somebody else? The wind outside howled against the window. Somewhere down the street, kids shrieked with delight, or was it something darker stirring beneath the celebration? Emily swallowed. For years she never questioned. Costumes, candy, cute photos, just like everyone else. Just tradition, just childhood. But a child's question carries weight when heaven sends it. And suddenly, everything playful felt questionable. Not evil, not dramatic, just wrong enough to make her heart tighten. A scripture she'd forgotten flickered through her memory, faint like candlelight. Have no fellowship with the works of darkness. Her chest tightened. Why did her daughter ask that? Why now? Why tonight? Michael forced a smile. A thin, shaky smile that didn't reach his eyes. He tried to say something reassuring, simple, comforting, but the words wouldn't come. And in that speechless moment, they both felt it. Not fear, but conviction, a holy discomfort, a divine interruption. A gentle voice inside whispered, "Pay attention, because behind every innocent mask, every playful ghost, every cute witch costume, there is a story the world forgot to tell, a door that many open without knowing what lies on the other side." And tonight, in this ordinary Christian home, that door had been touched. Not fully opened, not yet, but touched. Not by darkness, but by truth. By a question heaven wanted answered. Emily didn't know what bothered her more, the quiet conviction in her chest, or the realization that she didn't know how to respond. A child asked a question, and suddenly a tradition trembled. Because sometimes the greatest battles don't begin with demons, but with doubts. And sometimes God doesn't shake the earth. He just shakes your spirit. And tonight, something had awakened. And nothing, absolutely nothing in their home, would remain the same again. Night settled heavy over the neighborhood. Laughter and footsteps echoed faintly outside. Children in costumes, parents with flashlights, the faint rustle of candy bags. But inside Emily and Michael's home, there was a different kind of stillness, a spiritual pause. A pause that happens when heaven holds its breath, waiting to see if a heart will listen. Emily sat at the kitchen table, hands wrapped around a warm mug she wasn't drinking. Michael leaned on the counter, arms crossed, eyes distant. Ava's question replayed in both their minds, whispering like a gentle but relentless knock. Who are we celebrating? They didn't answer her then, not because they wouldn't, but because suddenly they couldn't. Conviction doesn't shout. It sits quietly until you feel its weight. Emily opened her laptop, not to argue, not to defend tradition, but to seek. She typed slowly, "History of Halloween," a simple search, an innocent search. Yet the moment the first words appeared, a strange shiver touched the room. Not fear, recognition. As if something long buried was being dragged into the light. Michael moved closer, reading over her shoulder. Halloween, a night so familiar, yet so few know where it began. Before costumes and candy, before pumpkin buckets and plastic cobwebs, there were bonfires, spells, masks to hide from spirits, food left out for wandering souls, people calling upon the dead. Not the celebration of pretend darkness, but participation in the real thing. A festival once called Samhain, the night when people believed the dead walked among the living. A night to honor spirits, a night to invite them, a night to welcome what should not be welcomed. Emily blinked. Michael exhaled slowly. This wasn't about candy. This wasn't about fun. This wasn't about cute photos or costumes. This was about origins, roots, a seed planted long before they existed, and somehow still bearing fruit today. Emily whispered, "Why didn't I know this?" Michael didn't answer. He couldn't, because sometimes truth doesn't attack your mind. It arrests your spirit. Emily scrolled further. Church history, beliefs shifting, costumes to ward off spirits, children dressing as ghosts so demons wouldn't harm them. Candles in turnips to guide souls in darkness. Ancient practices wrapped in modern innocence. Until a whisper, not loud, but unmistakably holy, touched Emily's heart. "My people perish for lack of knowledge." A lump rose in her throat. Michael broke the silence first. His voice low, shaken. "We just never asked. We never questioned it." Emily shut the laptop slowly. Not out of fear, out of awareness. Truth doesn't threaten the believer, it awakens them. Outside, a group of kids ran by yelling joyfully, and for the first time in her life, those voices sounded lonely, like echoes chasing tradition without knowing why. Emily whispered a prayer she didn't plan to pray. "Lord, open our eyes, show us what honors you, and give us courage to follow." Michael reached for her hand. Their fingers intertwined, not out of fear of darkness, but a new desire for light. Because sometimes the real battle isn't choosing between good and evil, but choosing between comfortable and holy. Down the hallway, Ava slept peacefully, an innocent heart, unaware that heaven had stirred her question for such a time as this. And somewhere beyond the veil of the ordinary, the kingdom of darkness stirred, not because power was lost, but because someone had begun to see. The family didn't know what tomorrow would bring. They didn't know the conversations ahead, the questions, the resistance, the calling. But tonight, they knew one truth. They were waking up. And once God opens your eyes, you don't close them again. Halloween morning came quiet. Too quiet for a home once filled with carefree excitement for this day. Emily moved slowly through the living room, packing away decorations she once adored. Paper bats, tiny pumpkins, the glitter fairy wings. Not out of fear, but out of uneasy loyalty to a God she suddenly wanted to honor more than habit. Michael stood by the window, arms crossed, watching the neighborhood come alive. Fake cobwebs glistened on fences. Orange lights blinked in windows. Parents waved from driveways, proud of costumes they spent weeks perfecting. Pumpkin buckets swung in little hands like tiny lanterns marching toward tradition. And their doorbell rang. The first knock of the day. Cheerful, innocent, a child's voice. Trick or treat? Emily froze. Michael swallowed hard. They hadn't decided what to do yet. No candy bowl prepared. No decorations outside. Just silence in the richest, most festive house on the street. Their house, usually the highlight of the neighborhood. The one kids ran to first to kick off Halloween. The one everyone praised for doing Halloween right. Emily whispered, "Should we just give them candy?" It's just kids. Michael shook his head slowly, not rejecting, just unsure. Another knock. More cheerful voices. Excitement. Anticipation. Emily's heart raced. They loved children. They had always loved blessing others. Giving big candy bags, warm smiles, laughter. Were they being judgmental? Were they being fearful? Were they overreacting? Or finally waking up? A third knock. Impatient this time. Then a voice they recognized. Their neighbor, Mrs. Turner, cheerful and curious. "Emily? Is everything okay? The kids are waiting." Emily opened the door just a little. Mrs. Turner stood there with her little girl dressed as a butterfly, sweet, innocent, giggling. Emily forced a smile. Her voice wavered. "Hi, yes. We're just not doing candy this year." Mrs. Turner blinked, surprised, confused. "Not doing candy? Are you feeling okay? Everyone was looking forward to your bags. You always do the best. Did something happen?" Michael stepped beside his wife, not aggressive but present. He spoke carefully. "We're just rethinking some things." Mrs. Turner laughed lightly, brushing it off. "Oh, come on. It's just Halloween. It's harmless. The kids adore you. Don't break their hearts." Emily felt heat rise up her neck. Not shame, the weight of expectation. Another group of kids ran up, bright smiles ready. They looked from Emily to the empty porch, confused. The butterfly-costumed girl tilted her head like Ava had the night before. "No candy today?" Emily's heart squeezed. Her generosity, her reputation, her kindness. Suddenly questioned. Mrs. Turner whispered. People were saying something about religion. "You're not one of those families now, right?" And there it was, the sting of misunderstanding, the subtle mockery, the pressure to conform, the fear of being too Christian. Emily felt her pulse race. Michael's jaw tightened, not in pride, in protectiveness, because the battle wasn't candy. It was identity. It was legacy. It was courage to stand still while the world kept dancing. Emily whispered, trembling, honest, "We don't fully know yet. We're seeking God. We just don't want to honor anything that isn't Him." Silence. Not judgment. Not drama. Just confusion. Mrs. Turner blinked. Not angry, just puzzled. "Well, let us know when you're done figuring that out." She turned gently, guiding her child away, but the look lingered, curiosity mixed with disappointment. As they walked off, one kid whispered, "Why didn't they give candy? They're rich." And another voice replied, "Maybe they don't like us anymore." Emily closed the door softly. Tears pooled instantly, not regret, but grief for misunderstandings. Michael wrapped his arm around her. Their house felt quiet again, but not empty, because sometimes silence doesn't mean absence. Sometimes it means God is settling in. A faint voice echoed from the hallway, Ava, watching from the stairs. Innocent, observant. "Mommy, did we do something wrong?" Emily knelt, holding her daughter's face. "No, baby. Sometimes loving Jesus means making choices that others don't understand." Ava nodded slowly, then whispered the same question she asked the night before. "So, Mommy, if it's not for Jesus, who is it for?" Emily had no answer. Not yet. She only knew one thing. Truth was unfolding, and once you feel your spirit awaken, you cannot go back to sleep. Outside, kids laughed. Inside, a family learned that conviction sometimes looks like confusion at first, and obedience sometimes feels like isolation before it feels like peace. But every move toward God begins with one uncomfortable step away from the world. And this was theirs. Earlier that morning, morning sunlight poured softly through the curtains, gentle, almost apologetic, as if even the sun knew today would be different. Emily stood in Ava's bedroom doorway, watching her daughter button her little school cardigan. Plain, simple, navy blue. No glitter wings. No princess gown. No sparkly shoes. Just a little girl in her uniform with a backpack too big for her tiny shoulders. For the first time on October 31st, their daughter wasn't dressed like magic. She just looked like a child in the world, not of it. And that truth, holy as it was, hurt. Michael leaned against the hallway wall, arms folded, brow furrowed, the weight of fatherhood pressing on him. He whispered, voice barely steady, "She always had the best costume." Emily nodded, swallowing thick emotion. "I know. Not pride, not vanity, but love, and the ache of watching your child stand alone. Because walking with God sometimes begins where applause ends." Emily knelt, brushing a stray curl from Ava's face. "Baby, you look beautiful." Ava smiled, small, brave, trusting. But then her little voice, fragile as porcelain. "Mommy, will they laugh at me?" Emily froze. The question pierced deeper than any neighbor's comment. Not because Ava feared mockery, but because she remembered a time when she would have feared it too. Michael stepped in, kneeling beside her. "Sweetheart, listen to me." He lifted Ava's chin with a gentle hand, eyes soft, filled with love and apology and courage he didn't yet feel. Sometimes doing the right thing feels lonely at first, but God sees you, and you're never alone when He's proud of you. Ava nodded, not fully understanding, but children don't need full understanding to show full trust. She only whispered, "Will Jesus be with me at school?" Emily's breath broke. Tear escaped. "Every second, angel. He will walk right beside you." A bus honked outside. Kids laughed through the windows. Superheroes, princesses, witches, glowing headbands, plastic scythes. And there stood Ava, small, unarmored by costume, armed only with innocence and faith. Emily hugged her tight. Michael kissed her forehead. "Be kind," he whispered. "Be brave. Shine." Ava walked to the bus. Tiny footsteps, huge assignment. And as she climbed the steps, a little girl dressed as a fairy whispered loudly, "Why isn't she dressed up?" Another child giggled. Emily's chest tightened. Her hand trembled, instinct screaming to run, shield, rescue. But Ava turned, smiled at her parents, and waved, not in fear, in peace. Because sometimes children understand spiritual battles before adults find language for them. The bus drove away. Leaves swirled. The world moved on. Michael exhaled slowly, voice rough. "This is harder than I thought." Emily nodded, whispering, "Maybe that's why most people don't question it." He didn't answer. He didn't need to. Conviction stood with them in the quiet. Not shouting, not condemning, just calling. And in the stillness, it became clear. This wasn't about candy, or costumes, or fitting in. This was about choosing who their family belonged to, even when the world was watching. And whispering. The kind of moment heaven leans in for. The kind of moment legacies are born from. And to the unseen world, this simple suburban morning looked less like a school drop-off, and more like warfare disguised as childhood faith. Ava stepped into her classroom. Colors everywhere. Paper pumpkins, silly ghosts dangling from the ceiling, orange streamers. Her classmates glowed, glittered, sparkled. Tiny superheroes and princesses, pirates and witches. A miniature world dressed for pretend magic. And there she stood, just Ava. No costume, no glitter, just truth wrapped in innocence. First, no one noticed. Then one child did. A boy in a superhero cape pointed, wide-eyed. "Why didn't you dress up?" Voices quieted. Heads turned. A girl in a tiara giggled. "Did you forget?" Another child whispered, "Maybe her family doesn't celebrate." Silence. Not cruel, curious. Children sensing a difference they didn't yet understand. A boy dressed like a little vampire frowned. Not celebrating is weird. A ripple of murmurs. A tiny storm forming around a tiny girl. Ava's lip quivered. For 1 second, Just one fear touched her eyes. Then a voice, soft, small, unexpected. My family doesn't either. Heads turned to a quiet girl in the corner, wearing a simple sweater. Not a costume, just clothes. Another child added softly, my mom said we don't celebrate darkness. And another, a boy dressed as a puppy, whispered like a secret, we go to church instead. A spark, a flicker, a revelation whispered from child to child. Tiny embers of conviction in a room full of costumes. Then the teacher raised her hand for quiet. Mrs. Daniels, kind eyes, gentle spirit, a woman whose Bible was always hidden in her purse, who prayed silently over every child but never dared speak faith aloud in school walls. She looked at Ava, long, warm, protective. She opened her mouth as if to say something, and stopped. Her eyes glimmered with something holy she could not voice. A sigh escaped like prayer trapped in her chest. She cleared her throat. Today we show kindness. Everyone belongs here, costume or no costume. Let's have a good day. The children nodded. Energy swirled back, playful, distracted, but something sacred lingered in the room. A quiet reverence as if heaven had briefly rested on tiny shoulders. As the class settled into crafts, Mrs. Daniels walked by Ava's desk and knelt ever so casually, as though tying a shoe. She whispered, barely audible, "You are very brave." Ava looked up, unsure if she misheard. The teacher smiled, small, trembling, proud, and stood before her voice could betray her faith. A moment unspoken but understood. Because sometimes God sends warriors in armor, but sometimes he sends a child with no costume and a teacher who can't preach but can stand. Recess came. Some children asked Ava questions. Some walked away. Some stayed near her, drawn by quiet strength. She didn't win a crowd. She didn't need to. She held her ground in a room full of pretend power with nothing but actual courage. At home, Emily paced, checking her phone every few minutes. Michael pretended to read, but his eyes never moved across the page. Conviction continued its steady work, not dramatic, not loud, just holy, like dew settling on morning grass. The school bell rang. Dismissal. Bus doors folding open. Children running into arms. Then Ava appeared, stepping down, backpack bouncing, eyes bright, not wounded, not ashamed, glowing. A small smile broke across her face like dawn breaking in miniature. Emily exhaled, relief flooding her. But before they could embrace, a figure approached, Mrs. Turner, the neighbor, her expression tight, troubled. "Emily, we need to talk." Her tone was not curious anymore. It was concern mixed with accusation, the kind that spreads in neighborhoods like wildfire. Emily's heart stilled. "Is everything okay?" Mrs. Turner crossed her arms. "Some parents are upset. Kids are talking. Teachers overheard things. People are wondering what message you're giving your daughter." Pause. Thick, charged. "Are you trying to make us feel like bad parents?" The question hit like a stone dropped in still water. Eyes from other parents turned. A quiet circle forming, like a verdict waiting. A child tugged Mrs. Turner's sleeve. "Mommy, is she in trouble?" Emily's pulse hammered. Michael stepped closer. Ava clung to her mother's hand, confused. And in that fragile second, the air shifted. Attention, spiritual, social, emotional, tightened like a string pulled to breaking point. Mrs. Turner leaned in. "Just tell me one thing, Emily. Are you doing all this because you're religious now?" Silence. The kind before storms. The kind before breakthroughs. Emily opened her mouth. The world around them blurred. Parents paused mid-conversation. Children slowed their steps. A hush, not forced but felt, settled like mist. Emily stood in front of Mrs. Turner, her daughter's small hand tucked inside her own. Michael's steady presence at her side. This was no longer about candy, or costumes, or fitting in. This was about witness, about who they were becoming. about which kingdom they belonged to. Mrs. Turner's eyes were sharp but searching, not cruel, confused, offended, defensive, like someone afraid of being judged even when no one was judging her. Are you doing this because you're religious now? A line drawn in suburban pavement. Emily inhaled slowly, her heartbeat steadied, not by willpower, but by peace that passes understanding. Her voice came out soft, steady, almost glowing. I'm doing this because our daughter asked who we celebrate, and I realized I didn't know the answer. Mrs. Turner blinked, caught off guard by gentleness instead of argument. Emily continued, voice trembling with truth, not pride. We're not trying to be better than anyone. We're just trying to follow where God is leading us, even if we don't fully understand it yet. A murmur rippled through nearby parents. Not anger, recognition, a strange stirring, like conviction brushing past hearts, like wind catching curtains in a quiet house. Mrs. Turner scoffed lightly, but her shoulders softened. So you think the rest of us are doing something wrong? Michael stepped forward, slow, respectful, firm. We don't believe we're above anyone. We just couldn't keep pretending something was harmless if our hearts didn't have peace. Silence again. A holy one. The kind that makes people swallow hard. A little boy dressed as a pumpkin whispered to his mom, Mommy, do we celebrate Jesus today? His mother stiffened, eyes darting around. A dad in a sports jacket cleared his throat, trying to break the tension. It's just tradition, just fun. No one means anything by it. Emily looked at him, not arguing but seeing him. We used to say that too. No accusation, just confession. A few parents looked away, as if they suddenly felt exposed without knowing why. Mrs. Turner crossed her arms tighter, but her voice lost its edge. Now only fear remained. Well, I just don't want you to judge us. Emily shook her head gently. We're not judging you. We're just learning to be obedient, even when it's uncomfortable. The air shifted again. Conviction mingled with defensiveness, curiosity tangled with pride, truth brushed against tradition. Quietly, powerfully. A teacher standing by the door, Mrs. Daniels, watched the moment unfold. Hands clasped, eyes glistening, as if she wanted to speak but heaven had her tongue held still to honor her assignment. Presence, not preaching. Then Ava did something no adult expected. She stepped forward, tiny but fearless. She looked up at Mrs. Turner and said, not loud, not defiant, just true. I'm not scared of not dressing up. Jesus is with me. Gasped. Not dramatic, surprised. A child's truth striking harder than adult logic ever could. Mrs. Turner's child tugged her sleeve. Mommy, can we talk about Jesus too? Mrs. Turner's face flushed. The moment was delicate, fragile as glass, holy as a whisper. Before anyone could react, a voice rang out from across the parking lot. Hey, why aren't they celebrating Halloween? What's going on? Parents turned. More eyes, more attention. A murmur spread like electricity on dry air. A crowd forming, a moment brewing, a decision heavy in the balance. Emily held Ava's hand tighter. Michael squared his shoulders, and heaven leaned closer, because truth doesn't shout. It stands, still, steady, unshaken. And sometimes the greatest warfare is not in casting out darkness, but in quietly refusing to bow to it. Just then, a car door slammed. Firm, startling, intentional. Heads turned. Conversations died mid-whisper. Even the wind slowed. From a sleek silver car, elegant, polished, dignified, stepped Mrs. Whitaker. White hair wrapped in a silk scarf, pearls resting against a navy coat, eyes gentle yet fierce with knowing. The richest woman in the neighborhood, respected, quiet, private. Every child on the street called her Grandma W. And today, she walked with the weight of memory. She'd heard about what happened in her granddaughter's class and in the neighborhood. She looked at the crowd, then at Emily, then at tiny Ava. Her eyes softened, deeply, protectively, as if she saw her younger self standing there. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't hurry. She simply asked, "Is someone questioning this child's courage?" Silence fell like snow, soft, smothering, holy. Mrs. Turner blinked, suddenly small in her certainty. Mrs. Whitaker knelt in front of Ava, slowly, reverently, as if kneeling before a tiny warrior of heaven. "You remind me of my granddaughter," she whispered, smiling. Ava's eyes widened, recognition dawning. The little girl in class. The one who didn't dress up either. It made sense now. Mrs. Whitaker stood, turned to the adults, and spoke. Calm, steady, sorrow-tinged. "Some of you think this family is being dramatic. You think choosing not to celebrate Halloween is superstition or judgment." Her gaze swept the circle, not accusing, but unveiling. "But you don't know what I saw." People leaned in, curiosity tugging harder than pride. Someone muttered, "Saw what?" Mrs. Whitaker exhaled, long, heavy, as if exhaling decades of held-back memory. "I was 10 years old, Tennessee, small town. The first year people started doing Halloween parties the modern way. Cute costumes, candy bowls, decorations." She paused, eyes distant, remembering. "My best friend Rebecca dressed as a little ghost. We laughed. We knocked on doors. Felt innocent, fun, harmless." A shadow passed over her expression. Not fear, but grief. Until we reached the Miller house. He was the town's old war veteran. Everyone said he talked to spirits since his wife died. A ripple of unease. He invited children inside. Told them Halloween was the only night the dead could speak. Several parents stiffened. One child clutched their mother's hand. "I didn't go in. Rebecca did." A tremor touched her voice, just for a moment. She came out different. Silence. No one breathed. Her eyes. It was like she wasn't looking at us, but through us. Emily swallowed. Mrs. Whitaker whispered. That night, she woke screaming, talking in a voice that wasn't hers, saying someone followed her home. A mother gasped softly. For months she saw things, heard things, begged her mama not to let the whispering shadow in her room. Whispers rippled. Doctors called it trauma. Pastor called it oppression. She closed her eyes, pain flickering. Her parents moved towns. We never saw her again. The wind whistled around them, not haunting but warning. Mrs. Whitaker lifted her chin. I never celebrated Halloween again, not out of fear, but out of knowledge. Her voice deepened, trembling with holy weight. There are doors children don't know they're opening, and darkness doesn't care whether you believe in it, only whether you invite it. A shudder of realization passed through the crowd. Mrs. Turner whispered, Are you saying? Mrs. Whitaker held up her hand gently. I am saying this. Some nights are claimed for darkness, and God's children don't need to dress in it to prove their freedom. Her gaze softened, warmth without compromise. We are called to be light, not just on sunny days. She smiled at Ava, proud, tearful, reverent. Little one, I'm honored to stand with you. Ava's hand tightened around her mother's. Mrs. Whitaker looked at the parents, voice quiet but thundering in spirit. Some traditions are not ours to inherit. Silence, deep, convicting, stirring. Then she stepped back toward her car, but paused, eyes lifting slightly, as if listening to God himself. I told my daughter what I saw. She told hers. And now, here we stand. She opened her door, then looked over her shoulder. Not alone. Never alone. She got in. The car rolled away. The neighborhood stood frozen, not convinced by force, but shaken by testimony. Emily felt chills. Michael breathed out slowly. Ava leaned her head against her mother's side, peaceful. And the crowd, once judgmental, now looked disturbed, uncertain, thinking. A voice somewhere murmured, What if she's right? Another, we never asked. The wind stirred leaves, soft, restless, holy. And then, a child tugged his mother's sleeve and asked the question that cracked the air like prophecy. Mommy, if God says light and dark don't mix, why do we celebrate this? Every parent turned. No one had an answer ready. Not this time. Every family has a moment when God knocks quietly, not to frighten, not to condemn, but to invite. An invitation to see, to choose, to belong. For Emily and Michael, the question came from a child's lips. For Mrs. Whitaker, it came through memory. And for many listening now, it comes through a gentle stirring in the heart. Not fear, not shame, just awareness. Some nights look harmless. Some traditions feel safe. Some customs seem innocent because everyone does them. But sometimes, God isn't asking, is this wrong? He's whispering, is this mine? Because there are things the world celebrates that heaven never endorsed. There are doors culture opens that God asks his children to walk past. Not in pride, not in superiority, but in light. For it is written softly in Scripture, you are children of the light. Come out from among them. What fellowship has light with darkness? And under all the noise, all the laughter, all the costumes and candy, a still voice asks each heart, who are you celebrating? And maybe, just maybe, this isn't about Halloween at all. Maybe it's about a generation learning to pause, to ask, to seek, to not follow footsteps blindly, but to walk with Jesus even when the path feels quiet and misunderstood. Maybe it's about choosing legacy over fitting in, light over comfort, love over fear of being different. Not every family will choose the same. Not every child will understand today. And God is patient with all of us. But as this season approaches, and the world prepares its masks, its shadows, its invitations, heaven extends one too, soft, gentle, persistent. Walk with me instead. And today, dear listener, as parents, as spouses, as believers seeking truth, the question is not, what will others think? The question is, what story will your children remember you choosing? And now, one more whisper, as soft as the one that reached Ava's heart. Legacy is not built in crowds, but in quiet convictions. Let your home choose light. Let your children see courage. Let your heart follow peace, not pressure. Because the world celebrates for a night, but heaven celebrates forever. Have you ever felt unsure about Halloween before? Has your family ever chosen light over tradition? What do you want your children to remember about your faith? Share your heart. Your story may be someone else's courage. If the story spoke to you, if it stirred something quiet and holy inside, subscribe to Family Love and Legacy for more gentle, faith-filled stories like this. Let's raise children of light. Let's build homes heaven can smile on. Let's choose love, truth, and legacy together, because families who walk with God leave footprints that never disappear.